How's it going, everybody? My name's Parallax Abstraction, and this is the Geek Bravado Ramble. I'm recording this on the 25th of August, 2014. It is presently 7:19 p.m. And I don't know if I'm gonna even post this video or write anything to go with it. We'll see. I haven't decided yet. I've actually spent the weekend debating whether or not I should record anything on this subject. Because doing so is going to make me a target to a certain degree, I suspect. And my brain hasn't been doing so hot the last couple of weeks, less so over the last week. There's been a lot of bad shit going on in the world the last little while, and I just haven't been processing it very well. And yeah, exposing yourself to certain groups is probably not an ideal thing to do, but I'm going to see what happens. But either way, this is something I wanted to talk about. So the last week in particular, when it comes to the gaming space, has been something else. It's been something else. I'm not going to bother rehashing that chain of events here. If you're watching this, chances are you are well aware of the issue already and what's come up. If not, it's easy enough to find out. I don't really feel like talking about it again. But in the last few days, I've taken in a lot of information from both sides of this issue. And basically, I wanted to see, as someone who tends to have a lot of opinions that don't fall off wholly onto one side or the other when it comes to a lot of different issues, that's kind of one of the reasons Geek Bravado exists. I wanted to see where some of the concerns were on either side of this issue. So I exposed myself to a lot of stuff, both written and in video form. And by video, I really mean audio, because a lot of the videos I've watched are really just people speaking over a static image. On both sides of this, and it's been interesting. I've seen and heard a lot of interesting things on both sides, and I've seen a lot of really, really gross mudslinging on both sides of this issue. Some of the places you would expect to see that kind of thing from. And yeah, I got exactly what I expected to see. But frankly, there was a lot of really, really nasty mudslinging from places that it shouldn't have been, and from people who should know better and who should be more professional than that. And the reason I thought it would be interesting to talk about this is because I'd actually been planning a blog post for quite a while now, probably a couple of months. And it was originally going to be about a guy in the games industry. He was a community manager for Turtle Rock Studios, which is the company who's developing Evolve. And there's a little bit of a story that basically this guy expressed on his personal Twitter feed some opinions in favor of Donald Sterling, which is the racist piece of garbage who I guess now no longer owns the LA Clippers, but he did at the time. That you probably remember that big hullabaloo that happened over that. And this guy basically expressed some opinions that were favorable towards Donald Sterling. Not in a particularly horrible or crass way. A little crass, but nothing too crazy. And basically, as a result of something that he said on his personal Twitter feed, Turtle Rock fired him. And he lost his job as the community manager for Evolve. And I had a real problem with that, mostly along the lines of that I think what you say personally should not, well, but what you say personally should be your business. As long as you are not representing your company, i.e. speaking on their behalf, i.e. if you're on Twitter, for example, speaking through their account, or if you are not directly commenting on them, you should be able to think what views you want to say, and say what you want to say, as long as it's not illegal. The guy from Evolve, I don't agree with his opinion whatsoever on Donald Sterling. I think defending that guy is pretty gross, but I also think it's his right to do that, and I don't think his job should be put in jeopardy for that. I think you should be able to say whatever you want when you're on your own time. That's supposed to be the whole point of having a personal social media account, is that it's yours to do with as you wish. And there has been a lot of, in the last week, there's been this whole issue that came up the last week involving Zoe Quinn is pretty gross, because it started as a result of it started because of an ex-boyfriend of hers who decided the best way to deal with being hurt was to lash out against a public figure in the most public way possible. And as someone who once years ago stupidly did something like that on a much, much smaller scale, and without implicating anyone by name, that was really stupid and really childish of that person. I did something like that to a far lesser degree than he did many years ago when I was an idiot, and what this guy did was much worse. And it's unfortunate that that has what sparked this conversation, because the entirety of this issue now to a lot of people has just become about that in particular, and not the sub elements of that conversation that it has sparked. There has unfortunately a lot of the critical elements of that are getting drowned out now. There have been people attempting to discuss things such as professional standards in the gaming press, about potential favoritism, about whether or not the way certain things were handled was appropriate. And the problem is that some of the people with the loudest voices trying to discuss this are also people who are saying really libelous crap and are wrapping an otherwise interesting point that needs to be discussed into something else about somebody's personal life. And those two things really should not be connected in any way. I think the interesting thing about this is I think it has sparked a discussion on the ethics of professionalism and how media should be covered, but it sparked it in pretty much the worst way possible. And unfortunately, it's causing very, very deep entrenchment, and it's causing people to be unable to disconnect the stuff that should be left alone from the more important stuff. And morons going out there and hacking people and taking down websites and doxing people and everything else is just making everything even worse. It's becoming a great big tarball instead of, a series of independent issues that we can discuss. Everything's getting stuck together, and it's getting very hard to know when you engage with somebody what you're talking to them about specifically. And that's a real shame, because the fact is there are problems in elements of the gaming press when it comes to conflicts of interest and when it comes to a lack of professionalism. It's not everywhere, to be sure, but there are places in the past week that have been proven to do things that they shouldn't. And I'm not talking about who sleeps with who. I honestly don't care about that. But it's even little things that are far less tabloidy than that. Things like how it's been discovered that certain press outlets who may be responsible for covering certain creators are directly funding those creators. And people who call themselves professional journalists vehemently defending that. And I just don't understand how anybody can think that's a good idea. Like, several game writers that I support will not even back Kickstarters for games by people they've never met and they've never talked to, because they might have to someday, and they don't want to be in a position where they might be considered untrustworthy in doing so, in talking to those people because of that. And yet we have other people here who have pre-existing professional or personal relationships with somebody directly funding them, and they don't see that as a problem. I don't know how you can't see that as a problem. And things like this have been very clearly demonstrated. And I find it very interesting and I guess it's very frustrating to me that we can't seem to have this discussion, because not just because it's over such a passionate issue that this thing is wrapped up in, that it's causing a lot of people who frankly should know better to instantly lash out and treat any dissenting opinion as if it's lumped in with the worst elements of that opposition. But that's really what's happening. And it's causing no dialogue to happen. There are people out there who are trying to have meaningful discussions about this issue, or certain elements of this issue, and who are just immediately getting shouted down. And they're getting shouted down by people who would call themselves professionals, and who would call themselves journalists. And it's frankly just the kind of thing you'd never see happen in a lot of other industries. It's not something you would see happen in the true news world. At least when you're talking, if you're talking the true news world. I'm not talking the Fox Newses and that here. That's a different thing. And yeah, I don't know. It's caused me to really, the rift that has been created and widened in the last week has really caused me to see a lot of people in a less than flattering way. And it has caused me to really take stock of who I trust to get information from. And in looking at some of the content that has been made on the opposing side of this issue, i.e. the non-press side of this issue, it's caused me to really see clearly that there's a lot of morons out there. There's a lot of people saying a lot of really gross, disgusting, inappropriate stuff, and basically in attempting to make their point, basically destroying any credibility they have in doing so. And yeah, those people are a problem. I think they should largely be ignored, not given attention. But don't feed the trolls only applies to the certain people, apparently, not to everybody. But I've also seen some places out there that have raised some genuinely real questions, and have done so largely in as respectful a way as they can. And the problem is those people are getting shouted down in the same way. And the people who are shouting them down are the people who say they have nothing to defend against, who say that they are in the right, that they are professionals, that they have done nothing wrong, and yet are going out of their way to be incredibly mean-spirited and vitriolic, rather than just ignoring them or saying, I think you're wrong. I have seen people who again call themselves professional journalists saying some very, very mean things to people who have just asked questions. And that's just wrong. That's not how this is supposed to work. And it's really painting a lot of people in really, really awful lights. It's really shown out there who, it's frankly demonstrated to me who is professional and who isn't in a lot of ways. It reassures me that a lot of the people that I do follow and I do trust for information in this space are the people who have either said nothing or who have said one thing on it, said a professional, made a sort of professional one statement on it and said, this is what I think. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm going to move on. And I've looked at that and I've gone, okay, I don't necessarily agree with it all the time, but I'm like, that's what you think, you stated it, good for you. That's cool. That's how it should work. But the people who have equated gamers who are calling the integrity of some press outlets into question worse than ISIS, like, what is wrong with you? Like that. If you're that if you're that angry and you want to show yourself to be better than these people, then step away from the keyboard for a while if you're that upset. And there's nothing wrong with being upset. There's been a lot of gross things said about people that have been way out of line in the last week. There are even a lot of people in the games press that I don't particularly care for, and a lot of them have been getting some really out of line stuff thrown their way. And I totally understand that. That hurts. But if you want to be seen as a professional and you want to maintain the higher ground and you want to show that you're better than these people, and most of you are better than the people who are hurling the worst crap at you, then step back. Don't engage them. Don't give them more reasons to hate you and to keep speaking up. But that's the problem, is there are a lot of people in this industry who have become so polarized and so arrogant that they don't want debate. They don't even want argument. They just want compliance. And it's a very sad state of affairs where an issue cannot be debated, cannot be discussed, because it's become completely binary. It's either you agree with me in every single way, or you're as bad as the worst of my enemies. That's why nobody can talk about politics anymore. That's why, discourse is supposed to be better than that. And it's been really hard being someone who, by and large, I would say agrees with most of the people who think that there's some real problems in this medium and in this community that need to be solved, but that hasn't taken that extreme a view on it. It's really, really hard to be someone who has a middling opinion on something, or who has an opinion that is not even in the middle, but is probably mostly to one side, but not all the way to one side, because you get hated by both sides in that case. And you have two camps that don't want to listen to you and that think what you have to say is meaningless. And sorry, mouth is dry. It's really chilling. It really is. And I just find the way in which a lot of this, the level to which the double standard that is being handled in this industry is a real problem. We will see the guy from Turtle Rock lose his job because of a couple of tweets he puts on his personal account that are somewhat in defense of Donald Sterling. But somebody like Ben Kuchera, for example, can say some frankly very vitriolic, arrogant things under the banner of Polygon, but it's okay because they put a disclaimer at the top saying these are his opinions and they don't necessarily represent our organization. How is that okay? And that should be okay, by the way. very rarely disagree with Kuchera, or very rarely agree with Ben Kuchera, but I think he should be free to say what he wants to say. And I think if Polygon wants to publish his stuff and put a disclaimer on their site, that's fine. If people don't like it, they don't have to read it. And that's perfectly cool. But how is that okay? But a couple of tweets about a contentious issue from someone representing only themselves, not their company, are enough to get them fired from said company. There's something very wrong with that. Very wrong with that. People should be free to say what they personally think. As long as it's not illegal, people should be able to say what they personally think on their own time, however they want, and it shouldn't have to affect their job. If you are not commenting on your job, then it's frankly nobody's business but yours. And yet, we see a very big double standard applied within this industry. And granted, it's two different sides of the industry, the development side versus the press side. They're both gaming related, but they're not the same thing, I guess. They are, two very different subsets of a same industry, but nonetheless. And the thing that I find really chilling about this is that it's frankly the events of the last week. The events of the last week have been very valuable to me personally in that they have made it very clear for me whose opinions, who should be outright ignored. A lot of this content on YouTube I've watched just friggin' made me retch on this issue. A lot of the things that were said just made me retch, and I now know, okay, those people are on the extreme end of that. I'm never going to listen to them anymore. And that's been valuable. But the thing that's disheartening is it's also shown me a lot of other people on the other side of things. People who I've followed for a long time and who I thought were professional and trustworthy, whose actions both directly and indirectly through other things that they have done have shown me that they are very much not professional and they are very much not trustworthy. And that's a real shame because gaming media as we know it is dying a pretty quick death based on recent events. Based on the number of layoffs that we've seen, the number of sites that are closing down. Talking about video games in a written form seems to be a dying art. And I don't necessarily like that because what's rising up to replace it, and I say this ironically because I know I'm on YouTube right now, what's rising up to replace it is not necessarily what I want to see. There's some gaming YouTube channels I follow, but I don't want the PewDiePies of the world to become the new face of games journalism. I don't want the Game Grumps to become the new face of game journalism. I follow and really, really like Total Biscuit. I don't want Total Biscuit to become the new face of games journalism. I think his content is valuable. I think I'm glad it's there, but I think it should be there to complement more well thought out professional stuff that's done with journalistic standards. Because even Total Biscuit doesn't call himself a journalist. He calls himself a critic, which I think is fair. But he wouldn't call himself a journalist. He didn't go to school to learn journalism. Journalism is not a thing you just have. It's something you very much are taught. But we've seen people in the games press who have been taught that, who are journalists, not just in title, but literally. They are trained journalists who have acted and responded to some of these things in ways that you just would not see in traditional media, traditional news media, which is also dying right now, funny enough. And yeah, it's been really distressing to see a lot of this, and to see how to see the path that stuff is going down. And I understand it must be terrifying to be somebody working in the traditional games press right now, because there's layoffs everywhere, ad revenue is not working, and everybody is being pressured to do, even sites that started up calling themselves above this are being forced to do things like clickbaiting, because it's become a numbers game. Numbers is how you get the money that pays the bills. Without the numbers, you don't pay the bills. You don't pay the bills, you don't get to work. And that's a horrible position to be in. I've never run that kind of business, but I ran a business once, and it never did the numbers and it never paid the bills. And it's terrifying to see that happening right in front of you. I understand that. But if you can't find a way to do what you do and do it with the standards that are necessary to be journalistic, then I think you either need to stop calling yourself a journalist, or if you can't find a way to change to make it work, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where I'm going with that, because I don't know the answer. If I knew the answer, I wouldn't be working in IT. I'd be making a ton of money as a consultant right now. But I don't know the answer. People are not willing to pay for this kind of stuff by and large out of their own pockets, and advertising's not enough. And, I did a blog post once a long time ago called "What's the Alternative to Ad-Supported Content?" Because the fact is, nobody knows. If somebody did, everyone would already be doing it. But I tell you what, in the last week, there are a number of sites and a number of journalists, or a number of writers, that I don't want to support anymore, because I've seen a certain group of people among them who don't like to be questioned in any way, and who respond to being questioned in a manner very, very similar to that which they accuse their attackers of. And if you're going to profess yourself to be better than those people, then you need to be better than those people. If you're going to stoop to their level, and I know it's hard not to, when you feel you're under attack and your back is against the wall and you're angry, it's hard not to, but you've got to. And if you can't do that, then you're not much better than they are. If you're going to push back with the same level of vitriol and anger and hate that you think they are giving you, then you're no better than them. And you're not someone that I want to they're not someone that I want to offer my trust to anymore. And it's been really disheartening to see that. It's been very eye-opening. Yeah, kind of depressing at the same time. It's a weird time, and I'm curious what's gonna happen about it, because the press side of things has the more visible soapbox, to be sure, but they don't have the only one. And there are some very popular people who have questions. And they're probably going to keep asking them. So I'm very curious where that goes. But the attitude that this whole issue is only about one group being wholly wrong about everything and the other group being wholly right about everything is exactly the problem, because it doesn't take a lot of research to see that there's dirt on the hands of many people on both ends of this for different reasons. And it's not black and white. there's a lot of shades of gray here. There's a lot of people on both sides of this issue who should be asking themselves some very serious questions, and I don't really see that. I see one side just doing this to the other one, saying, you know, you're wrong, you're all scum, you're all evil, we don't give a crap what you have to say. And applying that in a blanket fashion is the wrong thing to do, and you're alienating a lot of people who are not like that. They just have questions. And there may be even questions that you could answer for them and put their minds at ease, but you're not giving them the opportunity because you're just telling them they're evil. And that's not how you do it. That's not how professionals act. The last thing I have seen from a great number of people in the last week has been any semblance of professionalism, and it seems to be continuing. And it looks like this is an issue that's not going to get resolved because a lot of the people with the power to do so don't want to resolve it and don't care to. Both sides want to stand on their high horses and be superior to the other, and neither of them is in all ways. Sadly, one side has gone to bigger extremes than the other, extremes which I do not condone or support in any way, shape, or form. And yet there are less extreme elements within that community that, again, are just asking questions and just want some genuine answers. And that's not what we're getting. And I take real exception to being thrown in with the worst elements of those people, with the people who have resorted to hacking people and doxing people and publicly shaming people simply because I want answers to questions like, is there not a professional arm's length issue with a supposed journalist directly funding someone in the industry they are supposed to cover? Personally, I think there is. But I don't know. It's interesting. But like I said, I may post this video and the blog to go with it. I may not. I haven't decided if this is something I want to wade into. But I think when you have an opinion on something, you're doing a disservice by not at least stating it and seeing what happens. So I might do that. I am not 100% on either side of this. I think I am definitely more to one side than another. But yeah, there's a lot of wrong been happening on both ends, and it would be really nice if there could just be some actual discussions that get out of this rather than mudslinging. But it doesn't seem to be possible on the internet anymore, even from people who should know better, I guess. So anyway, this one was extra rambly. I kind of probably didn't make a lot of coherent sense with this. So, but thanks for watching anyway. If I do decide to put this up, the blog post that will go with it, which I'll probably write tomorrow, will be sort of a little more cohesive and a little better to understand, I guess. But we'll see. Hopefully I have the stones to put this up and to get people talking about it, and we'll see what happens. As I said, when it comes to the people on the press side, I don't intend to name names here because I don't think that's going to solve anything. But I better know who I trust now, and it's sadly a smaller list of people than it used to be. But I do know who I think is operating with the level of integrity that I think is necessary. And the best thing you can do is, if you're someone who's thinking similar, the best thing you can do is thank those people for what they do. This is something Patrick Klepek has always said, is the best thing you can do is thank the people who do what you like for doing it, and continue to support them as much as you can. And that's what I'm going to do in this situation. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this helped in some way. I'm probably not, but whatever. But thanks for watching. This is not the normal kind of thing you'll see on my channel, but if you enjoyed this or something else I have on the channel, please like and subscribe. Helps me out a great deal. And yeah, we'll see what happens with this, I guess. So take it easy, guys. I'll see you next time.